People are streaming in right now from the outside. Thank you very much. We're going to run this morning along the same lines you've seen the last few days. We have cards and staff working around with cards for you to write questions on. We will, at the end of, in this case, Lenore's remarks, ask him as many of those questions as possible as time allows. And so they will come to me and I'll come on the stage. So one of the things that has been, I think, for me, most enjoyable about this conference, it's given me an opportunity to work extremely closely with a lot of people at the U.S. Department of Energy. Gary Granite, I saw him here. He's been on the core planning group, and we've had folks from the clean coal program, the nuclear program, the building program. In fact, almost every part of DOE has been represented here over the last couple of days, and a lot of really smart folks and a lot of folks that have been a real joy to work with. So that's a sort of a way of setting up somebody who's actually quite new at the Department of Energy. I've known Lenore probably, and we first met probably about 15 years ago in his office at Stanford. So Lynn was the founding director of the Pre-Core Institute for Energy at Stanford University, and he's been doing that. He did that for 4 years until arriving. I guess there was an interim between that and arriving at DOE. He was the dean of the School of Earth Sciences at Stanford from 1994 to 2002. And I think that was this position when I met him first time. And he's also helped found the Council of Energy Research and Education Leaders, another program that the National Council for Science and the Environment runs. And so even before he arrived at DOE, Lynn was definitely in my all-round good guy list of people that we work with. And when I think David rushed into the office last year and said, Lynn's going to move to DOE and be the new Undersecretary for Science and Energy. And it was like smiles all around. It's always great when you've known somebody and you respect somebody and you really enjoy working with them, and then you see them move into the administration and take a position of responsibility. We are fortunate that in my, I guess it's now 20 years at NCSC, I've seen that happen many, many times, and it's always a delight. So without further ado, I would like to bring to the stage, I'm saying Lynn, his formal name is Franklin, but I don't know, I've never heard you called Franklin. I'm sure, does your mother call you Franklin? Is that the way it works? My mother's always, it's Peter with a stern voice and Peter Donald when I know there's the boom is being dropped on me. So Lenore, Undersecretary for Science and Energy at the U.S. Department of Energy.
So thanks, Peter. I will say that the only people that call me Franklin are the salesmen that are calling on the phone. And when my wife answers, she says, I'm sorry, he's in jail. So this is the 15th meeting of the National Council on Science and the Environment. And so I think that raises an interesting possibility of stepping back and asking what's happened in the last 15 years on the energy and climate front. And the answer is a lot. And I think that in 15 years, we'll be able to look back on this period as one of great change, as midway in a huge set of transitions that are going to change the way we humans interact with the planet all around us, and that make us more efficient users of the energy that we do use. The president, of course, has noticed that this is a big issue, and last Tuesday in his State of the Union address, he said, "The best scientists in the world are all telling us that our activities are changing the climate, and if we don't act forcefully, we'll continue to see rising oceans, longer, hotter heat waves, dangerous droughts and floods, and massive disruptions that can trigger greater migration, conflict, and hunger around the world." So he laid out the challenge for all of us, which is to transform the world's energy systems to respond to our climate imperatives and to clean up some other things as well at the same time. So the Department of Energy, of course, is an important component of that, and working on that challenge is exactly what my colleagues and I do. My job, I've discovered that mostly people don't have any idea what an undersecretary does. And to be honest, if I had known before I started, things might have changed there. But in any case, my job is to try to coordinate the nation's science and energy research and development efforts so that we can act forcefully on the climate challenge. Now, this is a big enterprise, I will tell you, and this might be a place where my 30-year training assignment at a small West Coast university trying to corral academics to get to all march in the same direction, maybe that will be useful. In any case, today I want to talk about where we stand in the transformations in the energy sector and how we can put the combination of scientific research and energy technology research and a whole lot of smart and talented people together to face the challenge. We're excited about the challenge and the opportunity, and of course, we need all of you to be excited about the challenge and opportunity as well. For the researchers that are here, we need your continued hard work to help build the tools that will make the full-scale energy transformation take place. For the policy professionals, your continued thoughtful efforts to create a system that can accept the new technologies and make the transition be a smooth one. And for the industry folks, of course, we need all of you to make this happen. We need all the players on the field, and we need hard work from everybody. But before I talk about the energy transition in that situation, I'd like to say a word or two about the broader efforts that President Obama has directed us to take. Last June, he laid out a roadmap called the Climate Action Plan, and that's really based on three pillars: cutting carbon emissions by increasing clean energy and bolstering the efforts on energy efficiency, working on the preparing for the effects of climate change, and thirdly, looking to lead the international effort to combat climate change as well. That plan identified 70 federal initiatives on mitigation, adaptation, and international cooperation. And despite my professorial background, I will not describe each one of those. But I will mention that of those 70 initiatives, about a third involve the Department of Energy heavily in implementing them. So earlier in this conference, you heard from Administrator McCarthy on one of the key elements of the plan, that is EPA's Clean Power Plan, that proposes the first ever standards to cut the amount of carbon emissions from existing power plants by 30%. And while in China recently, the president announced stiffer goals for us in the U.S. to reduce carbon emissions by 26 to 28% below 2005 levels by 2025. At the same time, President Xi Jinping also declared that China would make its first ever commitment to reducing carbon emissions, announcing that it would employ 20% non-fossil based energy by 2030. This is a quite significant commitment by the world's two largest emitters of greenhouse gases. So it's a historic action. It's a step along the way, and it's a very important one in the transitions ahead. Now, I happened to be in Beijing shortly after that announcement. In fact, Amory Lovins, who was sitting down there, was in the same room as we listened to all this. And I can tell you that from what I could see, it's generated real enthusiasm and excitement amongst the scientists and policymakers there, and some worries about how they're going to pull it off, but a real commitment to do that. So later this afternoon, you'll hear from John Holdren, the President's Science Advisor, and the bottom line there is that all of this adds up to significant momentum. That's not to say that we have solved every challenge, but there is plenty on the way. So let me say a word about DOE's efforts on the science and energy side of things. Our work in this area starts in the Office of Science. It supports an integrated portfolio of scientific research. Some of it's discovery research, but a lot of it is use-inspired research in the sense that it is aimed at providing the tools we need to understand the world around us and then to put the scientific knowledge to work in the energy technologies that we'll need. So DOE works hard on the climate science side of this. It's been a lead in this area since the 1950s. And today our focus addresses the three most important uncertainties in understanding the Earth's radiation energy balance: clouds, aerosols, and atmospheric greenhouse gases. This work is aimed at understanding the relationship between climate change and critical ecosystems as well. Turns out that all the little biological actors on the planet respond to all of this and do so in ways that provide interesting scientific challenges, but also great opportunity to model this better. So this effort integrates experimental laboratory and field research and also model development. If you want to predict the future, you have to understand the science well enough to be able to do that with some accuracy. So the efforts are targeted at advanced, predictive, high-resolution modeling capability and better understanding of the climate, energy, water nexus. So this work will help us understand the scale of the challenge while we also work on the energy technology solutions to address climate change. And you might have noticed that this is sort of a dynamic time in the whole energy industry, so it's worth thinking a moment about that part of the equation. We're producing more domestic energy here in the United States than we have ever before, and across the country the promise of clean, affordable, and domestically produced energy is nearer to fruition than we might have thought 15 years ago at this conference. At DOE, we're working on both near and long terms to accelerate the deployment of technologies and to continue the R&D that makes the new technologies available. So let me stroll through the technology landscape for a bit and comment on what we have underway on some of those research efforts. Let me start with the sun. It's the really big resource, and it offers a clean and affordable solution that's surprisingly 99% cheaper than it was 35 years ago. So that's a pretty good learning curve, and there's more to be done as well. And in the last 6 years, the solar energy generation in the U.S. has gone up 15-fold. Now that was admittedly from a small base, but nevertheless it's really quite astonishing growth, and it's on pace to continue that. And businesses, of course, have started to figure out that this makes some sense for them. Some of the world's largest companies are deploying solar at big scales: Apple, FedEx, GM, Google, Walmart, just to mention a few. And we're also starting to see a bigger penetration of residential solar. 6 of the 10 big U.S. home builders now offer some sort of solar option in home construction, and there are new financing alternatives available that reduce the upfront capital costs for residential users. So those are steps in the right direction as well. And solar energy really contributes quite substantially to employment in the nation as well. There was a report last week from the Solar Foundation that noted that the solar industry is growing about 20 times faster than the rest of the U.S. economy, and that there are nearly 174,000 jobs in the solar industry in 2014, better than 80% job growth since 2010. So you say, well, okay, why did this happen? Well, part of it is clear. Part of it is costs. PV panels are much less expensive now than they were even just a few years ago, and they're quite a lot less expensive than the ones I put in my backyard. But I take that as a good sign. And it's quickly approaching parity with electricity from traditional generation. And we're working hard at DOE to try to make those gains continue to be felt. So we have an Office of Energy Efficiency and Renewable Energy, which I know you know, and it invests $1.7 billion annually for applied research across a whole batch of technologies. One of those is the Sunshot Initiative, which in 2010 set a goal of 6 cents a kilowatt hour as the cost of electricity. This would be, make solar energy competitive with other forms of electric power. And we're about 2/3 of the way there now, with lots more on the horizon. And the Sunshot folks are now working hard on the other part of that, which is not just the panels, of course. There's the question of soft costs. And the panel costs have come down more than the soft costs, so they're really concentrating now on how do we reduce the permitting and installation costs and provide a workforce that's skilled enough to do this in a good way. What about wind? Well, it's another abundant renewable resource with technology that's being deployed today at scale. It's a good choice for low cost, zero carbon, except for the manufacturing, renewable energy. And lots of markets today, it may very well be the cheapest of the new sources of energy resources available today. Its cost of wind is decreased by about 1/3 over the last 5 years, and the wind industry also provides about 75,000 jobs. So wind energy generation has tripled since 2008 and has the equivalent generation capacity of about 60 large nuclear reactors. So last May, DOE announced funding for the nation's first offshore wind projects in Oregon, New Jersey, and Virginia. And even with these advances, there's still lots of interesting science questions to be answered as well. So one example in this area is a new multi-year research initiative focused on understanding the physics of wind farms. There's been lots of analysis of individual turbines, but if you stack them all up in a big wind farm, then of course the wakes from one set of turbines influence the airflow around the others. And So this group is looking hard at how to operate the wind farms in a way to take advantage of rather than having a cost penalty for those. So there's the potential to reduce the energy losses by up to 20%. And of course, this could have a substantial impact on overall generation and therefore on cost. So we're also working hard to understand how to minimize and mitigate the impact that wind farms have on wildlife, and so that's an important component of this. And we're doing all this by working in peer-reviewed research, primarily through collaborative partnerships that involve the wind industry and environmental organizations like the National Wind Coordinating Collaborative, the Grassland and Shrub Steppe Species Collaborative, and the Bats and Wind Energy Collaborative. What about electric vehicles? Well, we, in where I was just before I came to California, the electric vehicles they're all over the place. But we still have a way to go to penetrate the markets in the larger scale around the country. Electric vehicles, depending on, of course, on how the electricity is generated, have the potential at least to reduce carbon footprint quite substantially. Sales of electric vehicles have gone up dramatically, doubling between 2012 and 2013, again against a small base. But we now have the largest EV market in the world, and that shows every sign of continuing. This market has been spurred by substantial reductions in battery manufacturing costs. if you look at models of what the fabrication costs will be once you get to substantial volume, EV batteries have declined by about 2/3 in price since 2008. So the learning curve is operating here as well. And the goal for DOE is to see the price of electric vehicles become competitive with today's gasoline-powered vehicles. And to do that, of course, you also have to build the infrastructure around. So there's the EV Everywhere Grand Challenge, which is working to make the U.S. the first nation that produces plug-in vehicles that are affordable for average families, as affordable as traditional vehicles within the next decade. And this will require a partnership with industry, academia, and the national labs on battery technologies and on other aspects. Of course, if you have lots of electric vehicles, then you also have to be able to charge them. And so we're working on that score as well, as are automakers. This last week, Nissan announced it would help install over 1,000 new high-speed EV charging stations in the U.S. by April of 2016. These high-speed chargers can recharge a vehicle in about 20 to 30 minutes. BMW and Volkswagen have made similar commitments in the past few weeks, so at some point you'll be able to stop for a cup of coffee and charge your vehicle all at the same time. On the research side, we're making to work EVs more affordable by working very hard on the fundamental science of batteries. This is an area where the combination of nanostructured materials, electrochemistry, catalysts, and the science of managing all of this can work to provide new battery chemistries that really can help us do this. And then at the same time, we're working on next generation power electronics. The Department of Energy helped found the Next Generation Power Electronics Manufacturing Innovation Institute at North Carolina State, which is working on wide bandgap semiconductor technologies to make those cost competitive with current silicon-based technologies. These materials allow power electronic components to be smaller and faster and more reliable and more efficient than their silicon-based counterparts. So this competitive technology will make electricity losses go down by about 2/3 during vehicle recharging. And obviously what you want to do is to use the electricity that you've generated as efficiently as possible. So let me say a word about carbon capture and storage. In the area of CCS, that is carbon captured from fossil fuel emission sources, we're also seeing continued development. We're working to demonstrate and deploy these processes to places where fossil fuels continue to be used. And DOE has put about $5 billion into the demonstration stage of this in President Obama's time in office. We've reached commercial stage for several CCS projects, including a coal-fired power plant in Mississippi using underground sequestration, to using CO2 for enhanced oil recovery or for conversion to other products like sodium bicarbonate. In 2014, a couple of other DOE projects, one run by Air Products and Chemicals and another by Archer Daniels Midland, achieved the milestone of 1 million metric tons of CO2 injected into the subsurface. And we know that from about 30 years of experience of injecting CO2 in the subsurface, largely in oil recovery kinds of operations, that if these are well engineered at well-chosen sites, they can be operated safely and the CO2 can be stored indefinitely. But these are complicated projects, and the costs of the chemical separations required to remove CO2 from combustion product gases are the biggest cost, and an area where significant research is underway to reduce costs going forward. There is work on the international front here as well. A few months ago, we announced a partnership with the Chinese to do a big-scale test there. The U.S. and China together will develop a CCS project there that supports a long-term detailed assessment of full-scale sequestration in an appropriately chosen secure underground geologic reservoir. Nuclear energy. Well, nuclear power, of course, provides low carbon power at a very big scale in the United States. It's about 20% of our total electricity and about 60% of the carbon-free electricity that's in the energy mix now. You might have noticed that there haven't been very many nuclear power plants installed in the last 30 years. But there are now 4 new ones under construction and anticipated to come online in 5 years. And later this year, the Tennessee Valley Authority Watts Bar Unit number 2 is expected to come online. So that will be the first reactor completed in the U.S. in this century. This is an area of active research as well. DOE is pursuing a couple of new concepts in reactor design. Small modular reactors are an example of those. These are small enough to be manufactured in factories and transported to the site, so reducing the long construction times seen in the big nukes, where they can be installed into the grid system directly upon arrival. They offer the potential advantages of lower capital investments, scalability, more siting flexibility, and enhanced safety and security. These are underway in the sense that we've finalized an agreement with NuScale Power to support design and certification of SMR technology. And NuScale is on track to submit its design certification to the Nuclear Regulatory Commission in late 2016 with a goal of domestic deployment on the 2023 timeframe. So that's less than a decade now, a challenging schedule to be sure. Well, if we've generated all this electricity from low carbon sources, we do actually have to get it to consumers. So that's why modernizing the nation's grid is absolutely critical to sustaining growth in the economy, supporting clean energy, and maintaining energy security. This point was, of course, brought home to us by events like Hurricane Sandy and by the consequent disruptions when the loss of electric power took place. So those lessons are too important to ignore as we also think about the impacts of climate change. So DOE is working hard on transforming the grid through both R&D programs and through working with the various stakeholders on software and data platforms, as well as the dialogue that it's going to take to get this all in place. We're working hard on the technical side with sensors and controls that will help us figure out the state of the grid system quickly, respond to changes in demand, and to be more resilient in the face of disruptions at a particular location. This was going to require lots more on the computational side as well. Then last May, Southern California Edison opened the largest battery storage plant as a component of a wind plant at Tehachapi, California. This project is aimed at demonstrating lithium-ion battery stuff and smarter inverter in technology options that I think it would undoubtedly have some influence of the conversation about the portfolio, but the fundamental parts of the portfolio would apply pretty much either way. So the answer is a definite maybe.
This is one I'm not following closely, but I'm going to throw it because it seems like a nice provocative question. Can you explain OMB's delays in approving efficiency standards given the President's position on efficiency?
Can I explain OMB?
Unfair question.
I think the short answer to that is no, but I do know that there is a process that we have to go through about regulatory issues, and we're committed to working hard to try to streamline that process as much as we can.
Excellent. Long-term vision, widely distributed energy sources in microgrids, or keep enhancing the big national grid with all of its limitations?
Well, you're asking me to predict the future, which is fraught with difficulty, but at the same time, I think we're headed for a grid with it will still have some central generating resources. It will be much more interconnected, and it is likely to have a hierarchy of connections. Microgrids are certain to play a role, particularly in isolated places, but often in other places. Doing this in the right way can enhance resilience. But it means we need a grid that's well populated with sensors, with active controls on how our power moves in the grid, and which is operated using computing resources that are going to have to be much more capable than what we have available now. So I think there is a big transformation underway in the grid that it's absolutely required, but it's going to take quite substantial developments and some market changes as well.
Excellent, yeah. Last question, because we're very short on time, so I'm skipping 80% of them over here. And I'm going to modify this one. The question that was written was, wave your policy magic wand. What would be on your wish list for Congress? The modification is, remember, it is this Congress, not the Congress you'd like to have.
Right. So I'm going to answer a different question.
See, now you've shown that you've really made the adjustment from academia to Washington, D.C.
So I'm going to tell you here's what the device I would love to have, and if we could do this, we could move all kinds of needles. But I said, of course, that sunlight is the big resource, and there's no question about that. So we have some good ways to make electrons that are carbon free or have very low carbon. So a very big challenge in all of this, though, is not just the electricity, it's the transportation side. So a device that would allow us to use electrochemistry to build carbon-carbon and maybe carbon-hydrogen bonds in such a way as to make molecules that you would have then as a drop-in fuel, that we could use the existing fuel infrastructure but not require that we use nearly so much fossil carbon. That would have the potential to change the world in a very interesting way. Now, to do the research that it takes to do that, we need support both for the scientists at the Department of Energy and all of those that we support across the nation, and there are many thousands of those. And so that means our research budget needs to be supported. And so what we will do over the next few months is to try to make the case that it is in the nation's interest to be working across this portfolio, and that there will be lots of benefits if we can do that.
And I think, just speaking for NCSC, and I think probably everybody here, will try to do our bit in raising public support for that investment. Thank you, Lynn. If